Israel has begun aid drops into Gaza as more global leaders condemn its actions in the growing hunger crisis in the enclave. 7 pallets of flour, sugar and canned goods were dropped from Israeli planes just days after the World Health Organization described the situation as man-made mass starvation. The Israeli military says it'll also establish corridors to allow the safe movement of aid convoys into Gaza. The Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, has accused Israel of breaking international law by withholding aid from civilians, saying recent images of malnourished Palestinians are completely indefensible.
For months now, Israel has faced growing condemnation for the humanitarian crisis taking hold across Gaza, with chaotic scenes and hundreds killed as they desperately try to seek aid. Those calls for change have intensified in the last week and are now seemingly too difficult for the Netanyahu government to ignore, even as it continues to deny starvation is occurring across the Strip and that its actions are to blame, instead saying Hamas is responsible for the situation. In the last few hours, we have seen 7 pallets of aid dropped across Gaza containing flour, sugar and canned goods. There have been reports some of those pallets fell on Palestinians in the middle of the night, causing injuries. We also know that humanitarian corridors are being established to help the UN and other agencies safely pick up whatever aid is getting over the Strip's border and distribute it further within Gaza. There is also humanitarian pauses being put in place, a halt in the fighting in densely populated areas between the hours of 10 a.m. and 8 p.m. in places such as Deir al-Balah, Gaza City and the Mawasi camp. While this was happening, Israeli forces boarded a boat in the Mediterranean, being sailed by campaigners trying to break the naval blockade of Gaza and deliver aid. 2 Australians were on board. For his part, the Australian Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, says the aid drops are a welcome first step, but he is accusing Israel of breaching international law by stopping aid deliveries for a period of time, as our national affairs correspondent Jane Norman reports from Parliament House.
The Albanese government has been gradually sharpening its criticism of Israel's actions in the Gaza Strip. Now, nearly 2 years into the conflict, harrowing images of emaciated, starving children have prompted the Prime Minister's strongest rebuke to date.
Quite clearly, it is a breach of international law to stop food being delivered, which was a decision that Israel made in March.
Israel, the Prime Minister warns, is losing international support, a statement underscored by France's decision to recognise Palestinian statehood at the UN General Assembly in September. It's the first G7 nation to make that commitment, and the Albanese government is open to following its lead. But as a middle power, a long way from the conflict, Australia is inclined to act together with allies like the UK and Canada, and only after certain conditions have been met, including the removal of Hamas.
We won't do any decision as a gesture. We will do it as a way forward. Are we about to imminently do that? No, we are not.
The coalition is firmly against moves to recognise Palestinian statehood before a negotiated 2-state solution. And while urging Israel to allow aid into Gaza, the opposition believes international pressure should be firmly on Hamas.
Let us not be blind, Andrew, to the reality. Any moral outrage is with the terrorists.
There are calls within Labor for more concrete action and immediate recognition. But the Prime Minister's authority over his party room is largely keeping those dissenting voices quiet for now.
Jane Norman reporting there. Now, debate has been raging as to what the end game is for the Netanyahu government and for Hamas, and what the future plan is for Gaza and the more than 2 million Palestinians contained within its Israeli-controlled borders. A warning, this next report contains distressing images and offensive language. The daily dash to relative safety as Israel's bombing raids leave few parts of Gaza untouched and few families without devastating losses.
Children have witnessed their loved ones die, their homes destroyed, famine. All the children saw the genocide.
Around 1,200 people were killed on October 7, 2023, as Hamas launched its attacks on Israel, with 250 taken hostage. The Israeli response was swift, but few imagined what it would look like a year and a half later. Nearly 60,000 dead, the Gaza population on the brink, and a growing international community calling for it to end. But some believe the war is far from over.
Understanding the situation in Gaza, close to 10 years. We need to clean Gaza.
Gabi Sibone is a colonel in the Israel Defense Forces Reserves and an expert on military strategy.
I think Israel is conducting this war in the most humanitarian way ever. The Gazan population is a parasite population. They live on humanitarian aid for the last 20 years. So the current situation is that the aid funneled into Gaza is much more than sufficient to the needs of Gaza.
Even though we see when the Gazans are trying to access that aid, there's scenes of desperation.
Because Hamas is taking control of that aid.
It's an assertion rejected by aid agencies and in stark contrast to the scenes in Gaza, where more than 100 have died from malnutrition, according to Gaza's health ministry.
I don't know what you would call it other than mass starvation. And it's man-made.
At some point, I think everyone in Israel will have to face the facts.
Thousands of Israeli reservists are refusing to take up their weapons as the war drags on and the goal becomes less clear, well beyond the stated intention to secure the release of the remaining 50 hostages and to wipe out Hamas, an organisation which has lost a reported 90% of its leadership and weapons stockpiles.
I think that I proved myself. I was willing, I put myself in danger.
3 reservists took their fight to the Supreme Court, arguing the aims of the war have slipped and the plan to squeeze Palestinians into an even smaller territory was illegal, but that was dismissed.
At no point did anyone in the IDF get a command to do actions to ethnic cleanse Gaza as a means of killing civilians, but you just, the IDF is oblivious towards what we'll call collateral damage.
As the war drags on, the rhetoric is becoming more extreme, the dehumanising language more commonplace. Evidence a far more wide-ranging plan for the future of Gaza is becoming clear. Since the ceasefire collapsed in March, the IDF has taken territory at speed. The United Nations saying 93% of the Strip is either under Israeli control or under displacement orders. In recent weeks, Israel's defence minister floated a plan to move the entire population of more than 2 million people to a camp built on the ruins of the city of Rafah.
Yes, of course, it's for their own safety.
This is what Rafah looked like during the January ceasefire. Since then, the IDF has cleared the population out and levelled the area.
The population of Gaza is evacuating from the fighting zones and large areas are being seized.
News of the so-called Rafah camp has reached Gaza's population, where locals believe the intention is that they'll never be allowed to return.
We are angry. We are saddened. How can someone else decide on the fate of the Palestinians? This is our land. We decide where we're going to live.
A long-time analyst says the mass destruction of infrastructure and livelihoods is Israel's real plan.
Israel really wants to destroy the entire foundation of Palestinian existence. I don't want to belittle Hamas's responsibility here. Without the attack on the 7th of October, all this would not have taken place. Perhaps Israel would have looked for another opportunity.
Whatever the outcome of the war, Palestinians trapped in Gaza will likely have little say over their future.